Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin. I am Jason Podolin, and today we are going to speak with an NHL alumnus of 341 games by the name of Josh Green. Josh Green was the 30th overall pick in the 1996 entry draft, which was at the time a second rounder. Today he would be a first rounder, and he went to the Los Angeles Kings. Turns out that we were roommates together for a short while when we were playing together for the Lowell Lock Monsters in Massachusetts. And Josh went on to play for a ton of NHL teams. He played with the Kings, he played with the Islanders, he played with the Oilers in two different stints, played with the Rangers, the Capitals, the Flames, the Canucks, the Ducks. He was all over the map, had a hard time securing himself as an NHL regular. He was always up and down, but there was always somebody who was going to give him a chance. He was a battler and he was a gamer. And now he's an assistant coach for the number one ranked team in the CHL, the Winnipeg Ice, at the time of this podcast. The Ice are absolutely rolling. Greener's an assistant coach there underneath James Patrick. And that coaching tandem has these boys rolling. So we talk a lot of WHL hockey. We talk a lot about some of the young stars they have on that team. We talk about Peyton Krebs, who's involved in that recent deal for Jack Eichel. And we get down to what we think players maybe can add to their game in this day and age that'll make them recognized. This is a great interview. Greener's got a lot of good things to say. A lot of lessons here for athletes who want to either make the WHL or to make that next step to the NHL, how to do that, what's important. And as always, I think there's a lot to pick up here if you're curious about the game, whether you're a parent or whether you're a player. So great to reconnect with Greener. We touched on it a little bit in the episode here, but old hockey buddies, old hockey teammates. It's the easiest people in the world to reconnect with. It's probably been 20 years since I've seen Josh or had a conversation with him, and we just picked up right where we left off. Very easy conversation when you're talking hockey. He's a real good guy. I know he's doing great things for that team there in Winnipeg. So without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Josh Green. Wow, a kind of good tune there, isn't it?
That was a great tune.
Yeah,
very
like
good. Love it.
Like that. That's good. Well, I'm sitting here, I'm smiling because I'm sitting in front of, God, it was many moons ago, but we were roommates one time in Nashua, New Hampshire for a short time. Josh went on to a much more illustrious career than I, but we were together at one point there with the Lock Monsters. Welcome to the show, Mr. Josh Green.
Pods, it is a pleasure to be here. We've tried to connect earlier a couple of times. It didn't work out, but I'm glad we could make it work here. And I can.
Oh no, yeah, no worries. Awesome. I love trying to accommodate schedules, and I know how crazy the hockey world can be. For sure in the WHL market this year with back to a regular season. Were you? You were there in the bubble, right? Last year?
Yep, I was. Yeah, 24 games in the bubble in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Right.
With nowhere to go.
And that was your first dip in the water for the WHL, right? From a coaching aspect?
No, I coached the year before with the Ice as well. So that was my second year. Actually, so 2 years ago, I jumped on with the Ice as an assistant coach. More of an eye in the sky. I would come on the bench for the third period. But I was a coach, but I wasn't on the bench full time. And then that season ended abruptly because of COVID. The next year, I actually took a position within the same organization with the junior A team as the head coach and GM called the Winnipeg Freeze. Our season got shut down again. And then the opportunity came up again to go into the bubble with the Winnipeg Ice again. So
Yeah.
So last year was in the bubble, was my second year with the Ice. This year, my third year. So
Right, yeah, because with the Freeze, that's when I remember a mutual friend of ours, Ryan Ginter, who's one of the head scouts there for the Ice now, was filling me in on you doing that, and I actually ended up reading an article on you doing that, and then it was like, then you all of a sudden now you're with the Ice again, and I know that things were a little bit dynamic there with COVID and everything switching things around. So that's now in your rearview mirror. That's not something you're going to go into anymore.
I like where I'm at right now. I love the WHL. Obviously, it's where I got my start. You as well. I like working with these kids. It's a great age group. These are kids that are obviously highly talented and skilled and really driven. So as a coach, I mean, that's all you can really ask for. I love my opportunity with the junior A team, being the head guy, being the GM, and kind of being in charge of everything. It was a bit of a learning curve for me as well, because I'd never been a head coach before, but it was certainly great for my experience. But I'm happy to be back here with the Ice, working with James Patrick, who has been incredible for my development as a coach, just watching him work on a day-to-day basis and learning from him and how he runs practices and addresses the team and runs meetings and all those types of things. So it couldn't have worked out better for me. It's obviously in Winnipeg, which is where I live now. So when I was living in Winnipeg, before the team was actually in Cranbrook, got word that they were moving here. So right away, I was like, I got to get on with that staff. It's a perfect opportunity for me to kind of, get my feet wet in the coaching world.
Yeah, it's a great city. I 1 year there, I was playing with the Vipers, which I've said on this podcast before, the Detroit Vipers. I had been claimed off of waivers, whatever that waiver wire draft is, at the end of preseason by Tampa, and they had their their farm team in Detroit in the old IHL. So I go to Detroit. We're playing out of the Palace there, and as all young guys, it's like, oh, I'm going to get a great start there. Tampa's, kind of a new start. Tampa's terrible, and they were, right? And the only problem was we were worse. Like, it was the worst hockey team like I've ever been a part of. Like, it was horrific how bad we were. And everyone in that organization almost got taken up like for some games in Tampa. And for some reason, I was just like the last man standing on that team. Anyway, not going to get into there, but it was one of those ones where it was the last year of my contract too. I was on a 1 year, and I'm like, you know what? Like, let me get out. So I asked for a trade, and they ended up finding a trade for me in the minors because they knew we weren't going to be in the playoffs, and I needed to get some traction if I was going to get another NHL deal. Yeah. So they sent me to Winnipeg. Daniel Gano I got traded for Daniel Gano down there. And off I went to Winnipeg, played for the Moose, and awesome city. Like, it was fun. Like, we had a good time. We had good players there. Randy Carlyle was there at the time. A lot of it surprised me. I think it's kind of a sleeper city. So I really enjoyed it. I can imagine having a junior team there. The guys must love playing there. For sure.
So the reason I ended up in Winnipeg is because in 2004 there was a lockout, and I was looking for a place to play. And Randy Carlyle was the head coach as well. I think when you played for him, it was obviously the IHL. In 2004, it was an AHL team, but Randy Carlyle was the head coach. I had him in Washington when I was there. He was an assistant coach, so that was the connection. But I didn't know what to expect coming here. I knew it was going to be cold and windy, and I was like, oh man, I just needed somewhere to play. It turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made was to come here. I met my wife that year. We ended up moving back to Alberta, which is where I'm from, for a couple of years. But then she wanted to move back to be closer to her family, and it was easy for me to come back here because I, obviously knew some people in the hockey world, and easier for me to come to Winnipeg than to force her to live in Alberta. Right. And we've basically been here ever since. This is our home now. This feels like home to me. So great city. I know our junior kids. They're treated so well here, even with, there's an American League team here, there's the NHL, but we're well supported. The kids get every resource that they need to be successful here with our organization. And I know they love playing here. That's awesome. So with your story there, did you sign an AHL deal, or was that an NHL deal that year? No, that was an AHL deal, and it was just a PTO. I think it was a 25-game PTO which is all I wanted to sign, because I didn't know what was going to happen with the NHL, if they were going to settle the lockout and go back. And I wanted that freedom to be able to go back to the NHL. But as it turned out, it was a full year lockout. After they canceled the season, I re-upped for the rest of the year, and we had a great run. We had a great bunch of guys. We made it, I think, to the semifinals that year, but it was just an absolute pleasure playing for the Moose and playing in Winnipeg.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. I definitely want to talk about your career, but we talked about where you're at right now, so maybe we'll just keep going with that, because you guys got a special group there, man. And I don't need to be the one to tell you, but number one ranked team in the entire CHL right now. I think you're still rocking an undefeated streak, if I'm not mistaken.
One loss. We got one loss.
Yeah. You got one loss. So you lost one game. Cruising along. It's tough to follow all the leagues all the time, but your box score is just blowing my mind, because it's like 7-1. It's like you're not even playing against teams that in your league. It's kind of crazy. So what is that team like to be around, and what have you seen from them so far this year?
It's a really special group this year. This team has come a long ways from the days in Cranbrook. Let's say 4 or 5 years ago when James took over. He really needed to clean house and change the culture, and he's done an incredible job with that. 2-3 years ago, the team moved to Winnipeg, and we just kind of continued on that path, bringing in kids that were high character, obviously really skilled and talented players, but we wanted to bring in good people. Jake Heisinger, Matt Cockle have done an incredible job of building their team that way, and they've given James the ball to run with, and he's done an incredible job. So our team, the reason we're having success this year in particular is because we are just so deep right now. We can roll 4 lines, top to bottom, and I think not a lot of teams in the league can do that. So we're able to create some really good matchups in our favor by just rolling our lines. And obviously we've got some special some young kids that are Connor Geekie and Matt Savoy, who are touted to go in the first round. We've got a 16-year-old named Zach Benson, who's kind of from out your way in British Columbia, who's going to be an incredible player right now, but the sky is the limit for him. So top to bottom, we're just really, really deep. And like I mentioned before, we've created a really good culture here where our players can be themselves, and they have the freedom to not to do whatever they want, but just to be themselves, and nobody's judging them. We've created a really good environment here with regards to that. So great group to be around. Obviously, we're finally having some success. We had a taste of it the last couple of years, but it's really coming to fruition this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Even listening to you there, a lot of things were coming through my mind. I've heard amazing things about James, Jeep, as he's called, Patrick, as a coach, from quite a few people. And to be able to work under him, you've already mentioned that. But it's crazy, right? You can be a great coach, but you still need to have good players, and you definitely got some good players there, what has been built through the draft, through the lack of success previously, allowed them to get some good players in there. You mentioned Connor, and you mentioned Matthew Savoy, right? Those were the guys I think went 1-2. Didn't you get the first and second pick that year in that Bantam draft?
Yeah.
That's pretty special. You got Lambos there. There's got these guys. You got some talented players there, and you mentioned the good people. Sometimes skill doesn't always mean you're going to be a good person. Did you hit the jackpot with these types of draft picks? These are good, solid kids that are coming in too.
Well, like I mentioned, we just wanted to make sure that we were drafting good, high character people. Obviously, they're good players, but Jake Heisinger, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, he hasn't missed on any of these players, and that's a large makeup of our team. I know we've got our Carson Lambos high pick in the Bantam draft, Matt Savoy, Connor Geekie, those types. But we've got Mikey Milne, who's leading the league in scoring, who was a mid-round draft pick. Gage Alexander was an Anaheim draft pick, was a later round draft pick. Jake and Smallwood, so obviously you need your stars, you need your high picks to work out for you, but you also have to find those diamonds in the rough, for you to have good success in a junior program. And Jake has found those players, and Zach Benson, who's a mid first rounder, I believe, but he's having an incredible year. He's almost 2 points a game right now as a 16-year-old, and I don't have to tell you how difficult that is, especially in today's game. So
Yeah.
Really haven't missed on too many players, and that's kind of why we're able to put the lineup that we were able to on the ice on a.
That's impressive. You said something there. You said something there about, no one judging you. And a lot of the stuff that I do is with players and like working with them to, well, how do you allow individuals to be their best in a team environment, right? Like there's certain aspects of that, and that's that secret sauce called culture, right? Is like how do we allow this to happen? And when you're dealing with players of the such that you're talking about here, we're talking top end guys in the Bantam draft. Two of them, like I've seen, that some players have both of your guys in the top 10 in the NHL draft this year, right? Like amongst surrounded by other high skill players, you need to find that recipe to allow them to be the players that they're allowed to be, yet still have a structure and have a team identity. That's easier said than done, I believe, right? Is that kind of what you're alluding to allow these players to be themselves, to be creative, yet still, be allowed to make mistakes along the way too?
Yeah, I mean, they can't just go out there and play their own game and do whatever they want to do on the ice. Obviously, we have a structure, we play a certain system, but we do allow creativity within that system and structure. Some of our top end skilled guys, they get a little bit more freedom than some of our other guys to make those offensive plays. But I mean, they still hear it if they create turnovers at the blue line, or they give up a 2-on-1 the other way. But more so, what I was alluding to is, there's no judging on this team. We just allow. I mean, we've got some unique individuals in our team, different types of character. Nobody judges. We just allow, people to have the freedom to be themselves. And I think that makes them comfortable within our team. Our team is so close. They do everything together. And honestly, I think that's part of the reason why we had such success in the bubble, is because we were around each other 24/7, but they enjoyed it. They literally enjoyed being around each other and hanging out, all day together. Obviously, you need a break every once in a while, but they enjoyed that time together. We had a room in our dorm room where we had a foosball table, ping pong table. They were always down there hanging out together, doing that stuff, watching movies, whatever it is. But they just genuinely enjoy each other's company, and that makes us a really tight, close-knit team.
Yeah, I agree. And any team, I'm sure, Greener, that you can look back on that you're successful with on the pro level, there was always that element of like family, you were doing stuff together, and there wasn't the disjointed, like the Czechs were with the Czechs and the Russians were with the Russians. And it was just like, everyone was kind of on the same page doing the same thing. Cause then I don't know, there's just a different level. There's a different dynamic there, right? You're willing to go to bat. You're willing to sacrifice more. I think there's a lot of things that can be said for that. And I think it's harder now. I mean, you saying that that's happening with your team right now, I from what I hear, it's harder than ever, just with the way social stuff is, with COVID, with everything, right? Sure. Like to have these guys be around each other is difficult.
Yeah, like on our team, no cliques, then that's, like you said, the Czechs go with the Czechs. It's not like that on our team where, the 20-year-olds hang together. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but our culture change started with Peyton Krebs. When he was drafted to this organization, he set that standard on a day-to-day basis with the way he worked. Not only, in games, but in practices, the way he worked away from the rink, the way he took care of himself. We would go out for dinner. He sat at a different table every time we were out for dinner as a team, just to get to know, different players on the team. And obviously he's probably more comfortable with, his age group or his peers or, whoever he's playing with on his line. But he made it a point to make sure that he sat with, the rookies on the team every once in a while, or sat with, players that were from a different country. And honestly, that is translated to the veteran players on our team this year. Now that tradition is carried forward. And that's kind of what we were trying to create here is that type of behavior, that type of attitude. And it honestly started with Peyton Krebs and the way he carried himself. So I wanted to make sure that I gave him some credit too.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, I was going to ask you about him and awesome job I was going to ask you two questions. I'm going to say, what does character look like? Because you mentioned, you guys want character people, and that's such a, like when I say character, it might mean something than when you say it, yet it's a word that everyone uses. Right. And I think there's different things that what that means. And I'd like to know what that looks like. And you kind of just said it, I think there, right? Like how you show up, what you're doing away from the rink, how you're interacting amongst your peers. And if that is different, let me know. But I also want to talk about Peyton Krebs, just because obviously he's been a part of a pretty big deal here recently, and he's a little bit of an unknown for a lot of people.
Yeah, and when you talk about character, like for me, that is just being a good person, doing the right things, living the right way. We used to have a saying in our gym where I used to train: "What are you doing when nobody is looking?" You can do all the right things when people are looking at you, and you want them to know what you're doing. But when nobody's watching you, are you living the same way? And I can honestly say that Peyton, he would do that. Peyton, he's probably the most driven athlete that I've ever had the chance to work with or play with. Like, he will not be denied. I'm actually shocked that he's in the American Hockey League right now. He's an NHL player for me. He is so driven that he will not allow himself to fail. So I was happy when he got called up, playing games in Vegas. I know he was, wanted to be part of that. He was drafted by that team, wanted to be a difference maker for that team. But now it's a new challenge for him, and he'll get over the transition and the move. And I honestly think that he'll be such a big part of this Buffalo team moving forward, and they'll be successful because they have a player like Peyton on their team.
That's such awesome praise. When the players I work with now, when I speak about, that relationship with the coaches, and you can't construct it, right? Like you got to be you and be you the best that you can be. But the number one campaigner for these guys, it's something that I totally didn't get, Greener, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like totally didn't get like that aspect of like that player coach relationship. I was just like, I'm going to go out and play, and I'm going to score some goals and do what I can do, and the rest will take care of itself. You know what I mean? Like, and I was almost like the opposite of like, instead of trying to forge a relationship, I was almost like dismissive to it for whatever reason. Chip on my shoulder, I have no idea, but like the stupidest thing you could ever do, because guess who's answering the phone all the time? You are, right? Or Jeep is, or whatever. Or guys like me are asking questions. Like, that word, like those words you just said, he won't be denied. He's an NHLer. Like, you want to see this guy succeed. Like, when you have people in your corner that are rooting for you, that makes a big difference, because it's a hard league to get into, as you know.
Oh, definitely. But for him, for me, it starts with his work ethic and just how he approaches, being a pro on a day-to-day basis. And, I can speak from my own experience where when I got to the NHL, it was like, okay, I'm here. Let's just enjoy it, And it didn't last long for me because I had that attitude, and I wish I could go back and do things differently. And but for Peyton, I know that getting to the NHL, it's just a step for him. And now the work begins. Like, once you get your foot in the door, now what are you doing to take yourself to the next level? Keep taking those steps. And that's something that I didn't really do as a player. I wish I would have, but I just didn't know at the time that how much work it actually took to get there, but to stay there as well. And I think Peyton has an understanding of that because of his maturity level.
What do you think is the I don't want to put a ceiling on anybody, because I don't think there really is a ceiling, which is kind of what you're talking to. And I always sort of got in the same boat when I was a pro, is like would go to work and like do the work, but like wasn't really trying to get better. Mm-hmm. Like not actively engaged in improving, right? Like that wasn't really part of the mindset. Like it was like, yeah, I'll take extra shots, but it wasn't dedicated professional intention with like, how can I get better? Yeah. And that is definitely something that I didn't do. And guys are starting to get now too, but not everybody still gets that, right? Like you kind of get in the comfort zone there.
Well, what I notice with some players is they'll do extra work, but they'll only work on the things that they're good at already. They won't work on their skating or their acceleration, because it's more difficult to do that stuff, as opposed to, well, I got a really good snapshot. I'm going to take about 10 pucks here and go bar down for the next 20 minutes.
Right.
But that's not making you better, because you already have that in your arsenal. What other things can I do to take my game to another level? Or like for me, when I got to the pro level, I was a scorer in junior, but I learned quickly that I wasn't going to be the same type of player at the pro level or at the NHL level. So I had to learn to, play the defensive side of the puck all the time, or be a good penalty killer, or, create energy with being physical, or drop in the mitts the odd time. So those are hard things to do. And I think a lot of people aren't able to adapt to that. and they get weeded out quickly. But if you can find something that will keep you there, if you find a niche, like for some people it's penalty killing, some people it's creating energy, like I talked about. But coming to the rink every day to get better and work on things is sometimes a hard thing to do. But the players that get to the NHL level, the players that have success do those things.
Yeah, you gotta get your foot in the door for sure, right? And however that's going to be, even me, right? I mean, led the AHL in goals 1 year, but I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get called up and be on the first line power play unit, So like, you have to make yourself, valuable, right? You have to be able to impact a game in multiple ways, especially if you want to penetrate into that greatest league in the world and then earn your spot to be there, right? But back to Peyton, I didn't actually finish that question. Like, what do you think that the Sabres got there? Like, what do you think is like, where do you see him, let's say, in 5 years? Like, I mean, I know he got a ton of points in junior. We've all seen guys get a ton of points in junior, right? And then maybe not be able to do that, as you just said. Do you think he can be a point guy in the NHL?
I definitely think he can be. I don't know if he will be right away. But because he's such a strong skater and worker and real smart, he's got really good hockey sense. I think he can be successful other ways while he, evolves into a role that, he probably wants, which would be, a power play guy or a top point getter. But he can kill penalties. Like I said, he's such a strong skater that they can use him in a multiple different types of ways. And like he's just, like I said, he won't be denied. And once he gets his foot in the door, I can almost guarantee you he won't be going back to the minors, because he's useful in so many different ways. But he's the guy that drives the line when whatever line he's on. Even when he was playing with, highly skilled players in Vegas, he wanted the puck all the time. And that's just, to me, that's a sign of a really good player, a really confident player, which obviously you need at the NHL level.
Yeah, for sure. I had the pleasure of interviewing Connor Geekie. I know his dad from back in Spokane days. So we've kind of stayed in contact throughout. I mean, he is three amazing athletes. Well, he has a daughter that's an amazing athlete too. And so we've been in context, because I think what he's done there with his boys has been crazy. Him and his wife, like whatever they're doing over there in Manitoba is working. And what a great kid. Like, what a great kid. Like, I really enjoyed my conversation with him. Like, last year he was a 16-year-old, and, he definitely had a mature, real likability about him too. Like, he just really seemed real authentic. So I do know Connor a little bit. I've been watching his success there and seeing his draft ranking go up. Can you compare Matthew and Connor for me? I don't know Matthew at all, but I just love how there's like this, Connor's 6'4", he's 5'9", one went 1, one went 2. Are they similar? Are they completely different? Like, what's the deal with those two guys?
They're different. They're different type of players for sure. Connor is 6'4", 220 pounds, incredible reach, very gifted goal scorer. He loves to have the puck and hang on to it and bring people in and make little plays. He's an underrated playmaker. He can obviously put the puck in the net, but he makes his line mates better when he's on the ice. I would say he's still kind of growing into his body a little bit. He's a great skater, don't get me wrong, but there's another level where he can get to. He can get more explosive, and he will as he gets older. He's 17 years old.
And he's 220 right now, Greener?
Yeah. He's big, he's strong, he's got broad shoulders. Like, he's going to be a horse.
That's a beast, man. That's a beast at the NHL level, 6'4", 220. What do you think he's going to end up at? Like, is he 230 at the end of the day?
I don't know. It's hard to say what a good weight for him would be at, as long as sometimes you can carry that weight, but it doesn't always translate to more explosiveness when you're carrying that much weight. So he doesn't have far to go as far as weight to put on. I'd say he could probably put on another 5, 10, 15 pounds max, as long as he doesn't lose any of his, mobility and explosiveness, which I don't think he will.
He's just a kid, though, is why I'm saying that, right? I mean, a lot of times you're still filling into your body, like
he's a man child is what he is. Like, he is as laid back as there is as well too, like off the ice. Like, he almost looks like a blonde California kid that I know he cares and everything, but it looks like he just doesn't have a care in the world. The way he goes about his business, real laid back, real casual. Just a pleasure to be around, though. Like you said, he's always got a smile on his face, and his teammates love him. so Matt Savoy is he is explosive. He's got a great shot. He's a little bit smaller than Connor. I don't know if he's going to get taller, but he's big and he's strong. Like, he's stocky, real tough to knock off the puck, and he can shoot a puck like nobody I've seen.
Oh, really?
They're both centermen, but they do play a different type of game, which actually I think really helps our team because, for matchup wise, it's, we have two different looks for those two lines, but both incredibly gifted players, great people, come from great families, and we're really lucky to have those guys.
Do you have to manage that? And I asked Connor the same question because, I mean, Matt wasn't with you guys last year. He was down in the USHL. But I was like, well, next year you guys are both, highly touted first rounders playing on the same team. There's only one puck, like, how do you anticipate that going? And I mean, he, like, to your point, I mean, he's so low pulse and, low heart rate. He's like, oh, it's not going to be a problem. We're fine. Like, do you have to manage that at all? Like, do you see anything there with this season?
So we have them on different lines. They're also on different power play units. We have tried them at times together. They had success, but I think it works better when they're on different units because they both love to have the puck. They both like to load up, on the power play.
Right.
I think that they could play together, no question about it.
Who would you keep in the middle?
I don't know. It's tough. I think I would probably keep Connor in the middle. It's good to have a big body in the middle. Matt can obviously play it, but I think Matt, with his speed and his explosiveness, would also be a good winger.
Yeah.
When he came and played for us as a 15-year-old, we played him on wing most of the season. He didn't play much at center, mostly because of matchup purposes, and we wanted him to get adjusted to the league and things like that. But yeah, we definitely could play them together. If they're around next year, I'm sure they'll spend time together. Right. When we load up, on a 5-on-3 or end a game, if we need a 6-on-5, they'll obviously be out there together. So they understand that there's only one puck, and if somebody has it, the other guy's trying to get open, or if the other person has it, then you got to work to find a spot for the other guy to get you the puck. So they're both so smart though that they would be able to adapt.
Take a quick break from the episode here to promote the Peak Potential Hockey Project, my 4-week mindset program for hockey players who want to take their game to the next level. Mindset is such an easy thing to say that we need, such an easy thing to say, oh yeah, I should work on it, but no one really knows how to work on it, how to change their perspective, what tools they can add to their toolbox to give their game or their practice, their development, the extra edge that it needs. And that's exactly what I do. What I did with this program. I took my experience as a hockey player, my 10 years of pro, and what I do now as a coach, and I've put everything together into 4 weeks, and I broke it up into 4 different topics. One being mental agility, I call it, the ability to be able to reframe situations and perspectives that'll serve you and make you better. Instead of feeling like you're the victim, instead of feeling like things are working against you, I give you tools to be able to meet them head on, to be able to use your mental agility to allow yourself to perform at your best in the biggest moments. Week 2 is 10X development. This is a way to craft your improvement, your development as a player with professionalism, with intention, and with focus. It's goal setting 2.0, I call it, in a way that you've never heard it before. Week 3 is growth mindset for hockey players. This is something that held me up quite a bit as a hockey player, not understanding that there's always room to grow, there's always room to improve. Even how to channel mistakes, how to channel challenges, what they mean to you, how to change the story of what that's all about. That's week 3. And week 4, very important finish, is called extreme ownership. That's where we control the controllables. So many athletes have a hard time understanding what is within their control. I give you the 5 biggest ways to improve your game and to prove your accountability to your game by understanding what you can control. There's other great stuff in that week too. Jam-packed weeks, tons of value. I've been told it's the best mindset program on the market. I stand by it. I'm seeing the results players are getting. If it's something you are interested in as an athlete or as a player, check it out, www.myhockey.com. It's the Peak Potential Hockey Project. Now back to my interview with Josh Green. In this day and age with the NHL, a I shouldn't say a lot. There's usually one or two or three, and sometimes more guys graduating to the NHL way earlier than in our day, because they have to with the salary cap, right? I mean, they need these young guys to step in. Do you anticipate, like, do you see that could maybe be an option for one of these guys? Are the NHL ready maybe next year?
I wouldn't put it past them. I think they could be. If we'll see how the rest of this year goes and what type of work they put in the summer. They're both dedicated. I know they're both big and strong, so they've obviously put in the work in the summer, and they want to be NHLers. I know that that's their goal next year to start the year in the NHL. But time will tell. I wouldn't put any extra pressure on them, just because if for some reason they didn't start the year next year in the NHL, it doesn't mean they're not going to have 15, 20-year careers. Like you said, there really isn't a huge rush to get these young guys in the NHL. At times you've seen players rushed along, and maybe that wasn't the smartest decision, and it ended up hurting them in the long run. I don't know if that would happen to these two. Generally, teams are pretty cautious about that nowadays, making sure that if they do put an 18-year-old in the lineup, they're ready. They're physically ready. They're ready to handle that grind, which I think they would be. But time will tell on them. We'd obviously love to have them back next year, but if they're ready for the NHL, then that's great for them.
Well, that's the thing with what you do, right? I mean, your job is to develop them and to move them on. Like really, it's sort of like that double-edged. Well, not a double-edged sword. It's, I mean, you're happy for them because you've been successful as coaches to prepare them, right? But then obviously it makes your team a little bit weaker. But you have to just keep going through that turnstile and getting the next guy up ready to go, right?
Yep.
With your, what, I'm going to ask you a little bit of it. Maybe it's a hard question. Maybe it's not, because you were a part of that hit. And I know that for me, it was a discussion that I had with a few hockey people that I know, and meaning when Matthew Savoy was 15-year-old. Mm-hmm. And it was I think it might've been his first game. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was one of his early games. He was first overall pick, and he gets hit like a ton of bricks. And no one did anything on that lineup, or at least no one did anything in the moment. Was that something that you thought was okay? Was it something that you guys talked about afterwards? Like, was that, I know the games change, and I know like there's a lot of different dynamics to that question, which is why it makes it hard. But like, where was your thoughts on that moment in time on that day when he came into that lineup and got blown up?
Well, I was sitting up in the press box, and it was right in front of me. It was a scary situation because as soon as he got hit, we all knew that he was out cold. So my immediate thought was, is he okay? I just wanted to make sure he was okay. Obviously, as time goes by and you see him get up, then you get those juices flowing, and it's only natural you want retribution. In looking back, I would have loved to seen some response there. I don't know if we necessarily had that type of mentality, that type of team to do that. Later I don't know if it was later that game or the next game, Carson Lambos, he got involved, and it was discussed, and we did show some pushback. It is a different game now. I know when we played, if that hit were to happen, it would have been a line brawl, 100%. But that's just not the way players think nowadays. And is it the right thing to do? I don't know. It's not for me to say. I know that in my nature, I probably, I'm not a fighter. I'm not tough, but I would have jumped in there, and I would have probably tried to do something. Whether I could have done anything, I don't know. But that was my instinct, and it probably wasn't my instinct growing up, but because I saw it happen so many times, like, okay, this is how I need to act. Right. Things like that happen.
Yeah.
But it's different now. I will say this: our team has grown a lot since that incident, and now, if anything were to happen like that again, like we're in there. We're in there like a dirty shirt. You don't have to fight. We never tell anybody to fight if they don't want to, but at least get in there. Go chin to chin with them and don't back down. I think at times in the past it has happened, and we've grown a lot as a team where we don't back down to anybody. Now we're a smaller, skilled, quick team, but we can also play physical and be first to pucks and take a hit and not be afraid like that. So it was a scary situation, especially because 15 years old. was early in his WHL career. I know there was a lot of talk about should he be playing, should he not be playing. He was fine. Physically, he could play. He could handle that stuff. It was just a situation where he cut to the middle and his head was down and he got caught in the train tracks. And he would be the first to admit that, yeah, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. And you know, I'm glad nothing further came of it as far as his health. He's bounced back no problem, and you know, he's grown from it and is a better player because of it now.
Yeah. And you guys maybe grew from it too. And that's why, I mean, I think everything's a learning opportunity. I mean, he must have learned from it, and probably your group in general learned from it. You know, just how you do want to show up, you know, how you guys want to play together and for each other, and what type of message that even tells each other, everyone in the room, right? Of like what you're prepared to do or not prepared to do. I just heard an interview on the way over here, Greener, talking about an old compatriot of ours who went on to the Hall of Fame by the name of Jarome Iginla. Connor there was talking about him in Calgary, and they were just talking about, you know, the elements that Jarome brought, you know, on a night in and night out, and, you know, obviously how deserving it is for him to be in the NHL. But they were trying to find comparables, right? And they're saying in this day and age, it's really hard to find somebody like that, you know, a guy that would be punishing in the corners and would be that guy that in a, you know, game 3 in a Stanley Cup final that would like drop the mitts with somebody to get some emotion going and really be that emotional leader. I'm a massive advocate that I think that player can still exist. But I also think that it's like for somebody to show that little bit of, you know, that little bit of extra, that little bit of grit, that little bit of that competitive nature. I think that, my God, like if I was in your chair behind the bench, I'd be loving that guy on my team. Like, do you think there's a place for a guy like that now?
100%, 100% there is. Like he was the ultimate power forward. Like I think back when you talk about power forwards, you know, John LeClaire, Keith Tkachuk, you know, guys like that. I remember
Lindros
and Eric Lindros, guys that were physical, will drop the gloves if need be, but they also have skill and they can score. Jarome was as intense a player as I've ever seen. I got a chance to play with him briefly in Calgary. He was the ultimate leader for the team. The nicest guy, welcoming off the ice, you know, made sure everybody was comfortable. As soon as that puck dropped for the game, it was game on, and he was taking no prisoners. And whatever he had to do to win the game, whether it was take a hit, whether it was score a big goal, whether it was drop the mitts to change the momentum, he would do it. And I think back to that playoff run that they were on. I actually started the year with Calgary that year, and got put on waivers right before the deadline, and then they went on that run. So it was hard for me to watch because I was a part of it for most of the year. But I also was watching it as a fan, like, man, this is incredible what they're doing. This team who I think they just squeaked into the playoffs and they went on this run, and you know, the Red Mile and all that stuff. Everyone remembers that, but Jarome was a big part of that, the biggest part of that for the Flames, him and Kiprusoff, I would say. But every playoff round, he was changing the momentum with a big fight. And I remember, I think he fought Darian Hatcher one round. Yeah. I can't remember who else, but Vinny LeCavalier had
that was a tilt
in the finals.
Yeah.
There isn't a player much more deserving to go into the Hall of Fame than Jarome Iginla because of the way he was as a person, the way he was as a player, just a do it all kind of attitude. And really happy to see him get that accolade.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I said, it couldn't be a better ambassador for the game off the ice too. Was always just a great human being, and you know, you're talking about you guys are looking for good character people, right? I mean, there's a great example all the way around of what a hockey player can and should look like, and it's amazing because he's born. Well, I think we're essentially the same age. I think maybe he's a 77. I'm a 76. Yeah. But it was like he's like the example to me of like what being a Canadian hockey player is.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? Like if you think about what it takes to, I mean, when you put that maple leaf on or what we stand for, it's like it's Jarome Iginla. Like he's skilled, scores goals, will do anything for his team, contributes in the community. You know, like will fight. Like it's just like I don't know. I just think that he's like a great representation of what the game can be and could be. You know, as a whole.
I grew up playing against him a little bit because we are the same age. And then obviously he went to Kamloops. I played in Medicine Hat, so we didn't see a lot of each other in junior. But I do remember one time we went into Kamloops and it was it was a TSN game, and okay, this is going to be a big measuring stick for our team against Kamloops. They won the Memorial Cup the year before, and it was like men against boys. I think they beat us like 7-1 or 8-2 or something like that, and he was a beast, and their whole team was like Shane Doan was there, and Tyson Nash, Jason they had so many players that actually went on to play in the NHL, and we were like, okay, we are nowhere near where they are as a team. And a lot of it had to do with Jerome and him leading the charge and being physical, and right from puck drop, you could just see in his eyes that he was like, this team is not going to even come close to us today.
Yeah, no, he definitely had that eye of the tiger. Do you think, and why I brought him up though is like, because I'm around junior hockey now. I'm around these amateur athletes, that are chasing the dream, and there's no doubt in my mind that the game is faster, the game is more skilled than when we played. But I do think that element, that Jerome intangible element, has been removed. Has been also removed. I'm not saying like the pendulum swung a ton, but I think like with the skill, some of that competitive, angry grittiness has taken away. Do you think that's like the opportunity for some of these guys now to be a separator because everyone is so skilled? Like, can that intangible be that grit that is really going to let you stand out and get noticed?
Sure, could be. I think you ask any coach today, yes, they want skill, they want speed, they want all the stuff that all the other coaches want, but they want gamers. They want guys that compete. And, there's a puck in the corner, two guys going for it. Who's going to come out with that puck? What are you going to do to come out with that puck? And I think a lot of players now, though, they use their skill. They try and use their skill to get it and their edges and all that stuff. I'm a big component of that stuff, but I'm also, you need that, that FU attitude. Like, this is my puck, and you're not going to take it from me. And
yeah.
Not to say that some of the skilled type of players don't have that, but maybe back in the day, there was a little intimidation factor where sometimes you could just look at somebody in the eye and you had them beat. You could just tell, I got this guy. And I don't know if you see that nowadays, and maybe it'll swing back around in 10, 15, 20 years where that grit and that, that feistiness will come back and be prevalent in the game again. But I do like where the game is right now. I think the game has never been better with, how good these young kids are. I watch my son's team play. He's 11 years old, and there's a kid on his team that I don't know how he's not going to be a star. Like he skates, he's 12 years old, and he looks like a WHL player to me at times. And he's still probably 4 years away from that. But
is that the 09 age group you're talking about?
2010 age group. This kid would be an 09 player. But yeah, it's incredible. Like, it's different now because you've got so many different tools available to you nowadays than we did back then.
Yeah,
different type of coaching, all this different skill stuff, and so I think it's helped today's player, and that's why the game is where it is now.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's an element of that, that compete, that grit that I would like to see come back.
Yeah, no, I think I couldn't agree more with you. I especially watching the NHL this year. I was actually like 2 years ago, maybe 3, like massively, honestly disappointed in the NHL. Like, to watch a regular season game to me was boring because every game was a no-hitter. There was nothing happening. Guys weren't even worried about getting hit, like in crazy areas, right? Like in front of the net or along the half wall, like just trying to get the puck out. There was I went to a game in Vancouver and it was the third period and I finally saw my first hit and I kind of realized that it was the first hit. I said, oh my God, that was the first body check I've seen all game. In the playoffs, it would ramp up again, and playoffs is usually better. But this year, like watching hockey right now to me, it's fast, it's quick, it's skilled. Mm-hmm. There's some grit to it. There's some edginess to it. I think the NHL game's in a really good spot. So yeah, I hope that the pendulum keeps swinging back just a little bit, right? And if you can combine those two components, I think, boy, we do have the best sport in the world, but I think it can be like fantastic.
Yeah. Here's what I think about that. I think that there's 82 games in a season. You're playing 3-4 times a week. It's a lot, and to get that emotional level up, every single night is a tough thing to do. Playing that many games, so you see it come back in the playoffs because the games they're so much more meaningful, right? Yeah. But there's not, especially early in the season, in the dog days of January, February, maybe these games aren't as meaningful, and guys don't get up quite as much as they would for a game 1 of the playoffs or a game 7 or something like that. So I'm not saying that they should shorten the season, but I just know how tough it is during an 82 game schedule to get to that emotional level every single night.
It's a lot, for sure. It's a lot. I think this year they're getting the benefit of having the crowds in there, right? I mean, it's just giving them a little bit of boost because I think they're just so thankful to have them in there, right?
Yeah, 100%.
As far, actually, we got a question here. So we are live in my Facebook group, which I told you. So I got a Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. So if any parents out there that aren't involved in it but are on Facebook, it's I'm really proud of the group. It's like 1,500 families from all across North America. Their kids are in different aspects of sports, and just kind of talk about some of these intangibles that I think make a difference. With anyone chasing their journey, right, and give some support and some advice. So we're live in there, and we have a question, some saying, do you think that some of this grit and tangible missing stuff has to do with the removal of checking and real contact at younger levels? That's a great question. What do you think for that, Greener?
I don't know. I think you can still have that grit and those types of intangibles without, the body contact or the body checking or the huge open ice hits. Like I'm just talking about puck battles or battling for position in front of the net.
Yeah.
I think at the younger levels, and I see this, like I said, with my kids' teams where there's kids out there that are 6'1", 170 pounds, and there's kids out there that are barely 5 feet and, they're 85 pounds, So I think I like that they've taken hitting out at the younger ages. I just think you really run the risk of injuries for certain players at that age. And we want to teach them, how to play the game the right way. Yeah. Not going out looking for these big open ice hits. So I think you can still have that grit and that, that type of play without the body checking. At some point, you certainly have to introduce it because that's, as you get older in age, then hitting becomes introduced. So I would love to see more emphasis put on, body contact clinics. Obviously, you want to teach kids how to make a proper hit, but I think you really need to teach kids how to take a hit, because a lot of these kids, they go into a game where, it's their first game of hitting, and they have no idea what they're doing or how to protect themselves or how to not put themselves in a bad position, which is really, and so we talked about Matt Savoy, same sort of thing. Obviously he knew what he was doing, but he put himself in a tough spot and took a big hit. So I think if there's more teaching emphasis put on that at a younger age, I think, kids are going to be better for it.
Thanks so much for listening here to the Up My Hockey podcast. I just want to take this opportunity to let you know the Up My Hockey support. So that's me in support of teams or in support of players. Has been going great this year. I've had the opportunity of working with the BCHL, the first place BCHL Salmon Arm Silverbacks. I'm also working with other amateur teams, minor hockey teams, and also individual players. It's been an awesome season so far. Lots of fun, getting lots of players great results. One of the ways you can work with me is in the team environment. If you're a coach there listening, or an association, or somebody, manager of a team that thinks, you know what, we'd like to do something a little different this year with our team. We want to do some team building that is unlike anything else. And that's what I do. I bring mindset to the table. I bring character to the table. I talk about goal setting in different ways than most people do. And it really gets great results. It changes the culture of the team. Really gives you that extra competitive advantage that you'd like to have, and it also gives your players an advantage just as being human beings moving forward in whatever space that they operate in, whether it's school or whether it's a future job or whatever that case may be. So that's one way. The other way is the Peak Potential Project, which is my signature course now. Players are going through it and getting amazing results. It's something that I release every 6 weeks. It's a 4-week program that has daily content Monday to Friday. It's only 20 minutes of daily content with some challenges assigned to that. It includes a coaching call with me each week. And players, like I said, are just getting rave reviews about the course. Parents are loving it, tons of value. So that's a couple of ways you can work with the Up My Hockey support system that's going on there. I guess that's all I got. Is www.upmyhockey.com is where you can find that. all the information, you can reach out to me directly there. I'm also on Instagram at Jason Podolin, where you can see a lot of my content for free. There's also the Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. This is a private group with now over 1,500 families from across North America. Tons of great content there, good support, a great community. We like to celebrate the success of our athletes and talk about some of the challenges, and very positive and informative group. So lots of ways to follow me and what I'm doing, and lots of ways to work with me. Now let's get back to the podcast with Josh Green.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like I did a hitting clinic this year in the summer, and that was what I spent pretty much the entire clinic for a week was on, like, how to receive the content, because, well, one, they don't know how. Giving a hit is different than receiving one. And all players need to learn how to receive a hit. You don't necessarily have to be a physical player, especially in today's day and age, right? But you do need to know how to put your body in position to be able to absorb contact or to feel it. One of the things that I've noticed, Greener, because my kids, I have 3 boys, one's 12, one's 11, one's 8, right? So I've seen them now go through the social environment structure of, like, what it means to be a kid these days, and how they interact with each other, and what they're allowed to do at school, not allowed to do at school. Sounds like you have a boy the exact same age. There's, like, physical contact, especially now, even through COVID. It's, like, so not acceptable that they're not athletic when it comes to that. Like, they don't wrestle. Yeah. They don't play tackle football. I mean, all these body awareness type scenarios that you and I were growing up with cuts on our knees and our elbows and stuff, like, we instinctively knew how to go into hitting much quicker, I think, right, than these kids. Because, like, right now there's just, they don't do it, right? So now all of a sudden they're in this game called hockey, which is physical and can be, and you have these big players who are now second year Bantam. You have these first year Bantams that haven't even been through puberty yet. Now they're trying to, like, navigate hockey at, like, full ice contact, and they've never even wrestled really before. It's like, it doesn't work out very well sometimes.
Well, I say this all the time. I see a lot of parents who have kids that are one sport athletes, where it's hockey 12 months of the year and that's it. And I just think there's such an advantage to having your kids play a multitude of sports, because, for instance, baseball can help with hand-eye. Soccer, your footwork, lacrosse obviously helps with hockey as well. So I think the more sports that you can expose your kids to, the better off they're going to be as athletes. Maybe not just hockey players, but as athletes, and all of the stuff translates towards hockey. So if your kid is playing, if he's playing 12 months of hockey a year, I just don't think there's a lot of benefit to that. He needs to have an off switch for hockey and do other things that will rekindle his fire for when hockey season comes around again. I played fastball when I was growing up in Alberta, and I played soccer, and, I played golf, so I just think that, number one, all these other sports will help you in your hockey, but it also, it gets your mind off hockey for a few months of the year, where, now when the weather gets cold again, now you're like, oh yeah, it's hockey season again. And then you get that fire burning again. As opposed to, I think some of these kids get burnt out, playing so much hockey, and you see a lot of them leave the sport or stop playing when they're, 14, 15, 16 years old, which is where they should be, taking off.
Yeah, ramping it up. I agree with you. I mean, if you had to ask me where my line is, I'm that. I mean, at some point, and I think it's earlier than when we played, like, you do need to commit, just because that's the way it goes. You got to pick your sport. But yeah, I mean, I think, like, 12 and under, 13 and under. I think it makes you a better athlete, like you said, which I think correlates to being a better hockey player. I think it gets you better ready mentally. I think all these other sports, like the nuances of other sports, whether it be basketball, basketball, soccer, football, like there's relational aspects that apply to your sport, right? And the deeper your nuanced, like your understanding, your knowledge of that is, I think it applies big time. Which brings me to the next question, actually, which is another thing that I see, and obviously don't agree with me if you don't, but I think what I would call hockey IQ I don't think it matches, like, the development in the skill aspect. I have a few theories on that, for me saying that, but do you see that? Do you see these guys coming in and, like, maybe not quite understanding the game as much as you would like them to do?
A little bit. I see, like, hockey sense is huge for us. We want our players to have that hockey sense. Um, so I think a lot of kids nowadays are so focused on the skill aspect of it. Like, can I take a puck and, flip it up and go under the bar, all that type of stuff. What I love most, like, don't get me wrong, I love all that stuff. I think it can help you as a player. I love small area games. I love where you have to use your brain and think, and you have to be adaptable and creative and those types of things. I learned hockey growing up on an outdoor rink where it was just an open sheet and a puck and a couple nets and some buddies, and we would just play shinny. And that's where I kind of learned, a lot of different skill stuff. And, I would just experiment with things out on the outdoor rink. But now it's so specific to, if you're going to play junior, you need to be able to go under the stick and under the bar and all that. Sure, that stuff helps, but I think that hockey sense and compete and, that adaptability part of the game is just so important. You need the skill, you need the skating, no question about it. But if you don't have hockey sense, then and you have all the skills, then you're not going to go very far. That's just
right.
Kind of, we're seeing that. Like, we see kids that have all the skill in the world, but they don't know how to play the game the right way. And in a team sport, in the team aspect, it's tough to be successful that way.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I think I have my own couple theories. One is what you just said. These kids play hockey all the time, and it's always some type of structure to it. There's someone on the ice with a whistle telling them what to do and where to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much emphasis on, like, going around the pylons and doing this and doing that, right? Like the skill development stuff. So, like, there's not much creativity, not much reading and reacting. Obviously different coaches have different that, but I'm just saying in general, like, the general philosophy and direction of hockey has gone that way, where there's very little freedom to just go and play, right? That's where you learn how to give and go. And that's where you learn that you're talking about the small area games. Well, I love them too, right? As a coach now, I love getting into that because you have to work, right? You have to figure out how to manipulate situations to your advantage, right? Like, what works, what doesn't. Allow the kids to play it out. So I don't think there's enough of that just in general from a young age. And the other thing is, I think the way that these kids are participating with the sport, meaning like their generation, what do they watch on TV, Greener? It's highlights.
Yep.
All the time, right? We didn't have that luxury. We'd have to sit and watch a hockey game. You tell me there's very few kids that'll watch a hockey game front to back. They might watch the highlights in the morning or the 5-minute thing, but they're not getting, like, what does the forecheck look like? Like, how do these guys defend in their own end? Like, all that stuff is kind of like not part of it, right? And I think that without the creativity, without the open ice experimentation, without actually watching the game as a student, you become a skilled athlete that really doesn't understand their game very well.
Yeah. I love sitting down and watching a game and with my son. I try and get him to sit and watch it with me, and I'll just point stuff out. Like, away from the puck. Look what he's doing away from the puck. Look where his positioning is. My son's a defenseman, so I'm always telling him, watch what the D are doing here. They're always on the right side of the puck. They're not, they're not cheating for offense, because what happens if it doesn't work out, then you're giving a 2-on-1 rush the other way. So he'll sit and watch for 5-10 minutes, half a period maybe, and then he'll get bored and you're right, he'll go watch highlights, or he'll go watch goals of the week or something like that. But what's great, and maybe I might sound like a crazy hockey parent here, but one of the parents on his team will put my son's game on YouTube, and I'm able to just watch it with my son, and just, like, I can stop it and rewind it here, like, okay, what were you thinking here, like, all this stuff. I'm also watching his reaction to see, like, is he getting bored, is he paying attention? Because if he's not into it, then I would just stop it. But he loves it. He loves, like, kids are so visual these days. They want to see themselves on camera, but they also want to see, okay, I did this play there, this is why it didn't work out. So that part of it is really fun for me. That's the coach in me that sits down with him and tries to go through stuff with him. And I understand, I'm sure there's people out there thinking that, you're nuts for doing that, but I do think it helps him. But I don't do it every game. And if he wants to do it, then I'll do it with him. If he says, no, Dad, I don't need to see it today, then no problem.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think, it sounds like I think those are the two biggest ones. I think that's where the game could grow, or as far as, like, what this program is all about, is like how how to go to the next level or how to take your game to the next level is like, be a student of it, you know, like just don't look at the highlights and the flash and the goals, right? Like understand how that goal happened, right? And it's not, we love the Connor McDavid going through 4 guys and under the stick and beat the, you know, like we love watching that. Of course, that's entertaining. Yeah. And our youth though are so attached to watching that, like that's what they're trying to do. But there's so many things, as you know, that's like all the things you're talking about away from the puck. What's happening away from the puck? What's happening around the puck? And for me, like when I'm watching, even in like the junior practices that I've been going to and some, like, it's just like, some of these guys just don't get it, you know, like they're not quite getting it yet. So I think that there is some room for growth. And I would imagine in your position, that is one of the things that you guys are doing now is kind of maybe teaching the game in a little bit different ways than maybe we were taught it or had to be taught it back when we were going through it.
Yeah. And I will say this about some of our players, not all of our players, but a lot of these guys were the best player on their team all through their lives. And they had the freedom to do whatever they wanted out there because they were so much better than everybody. Whatever mistakes they made, they were quick enough to get back and recover, or they would outscore their mistakes. They would cause 2 or 3 against, but they would score 5.
Yeah.
But now the challenge for some of these guys at this level is we need them to. They're going to get their chances every single game, but can they do it within our structure where they're not giving up chances the other way? Because as a coach, that's what we want to see. Like we want to see not many chances against. We want to see obviously play in the offensive zone, but we don't want to be run and gun, because that's why I don't have a lot of hair left. And when our players play high risk and things like that. But so yeah, it's a work in progress for some of our players, for junior players in general. To now you got to play within a structure type of system, which they're probably not used to playing that way, in bantam and midget, and even before that. So it's a challenge. It's a daily thing where we do 5-on-5 system stuff every single day. And James is really good about this. If he sees something he doesn't like, he stops it, he corrects it. He'll look at the person that needs to fix their mistake. He'll look at him right in the eye and, do you understand what I'm saying? Yep. Okay, let's do it again. So they understand that we're trying to get them to play a certain way, and they understand if they're not doing it. And eventually they get it, but sometimes it does take a while.
Well, good on you though. I mean, because that's the other thing we already talked about, like how to get your foot in the door in the NHL. Like if you don't know what the defensive side of the puck means, or if you don't know how to defend, right, you're not going to stick around very long, because there's very few guys who can step in and be offensive producers instantly. Right. So like you got to understand how to do that. And that would probably be a scenario in the WHL that would maybe be challenging. Right. Because like you said, these guys they've been the best, and they have been the best. And now maybe even they are still the best, and they think that might always be that way. But that funnel gets real tight real soon.
Yeah. But we try and get them to play the right way now, because when they make the jump to the pro game or the NHL game, they have to play that way too. The best players in the world, they play a system. Well, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and those types of guys, they get a little bit more freedom. But, I watch a guy like Patrice Bergeron, who's an incredible player. He does all the little things right all the time, and he's one of the best in the world. Yeah. So that's, we show video of NHL games all the time. Look at how they play. Look at how hard they work. Look at where their positioning is. That's what you need to get to. And it's hard for these kids because, they're young and they're still learning, and they haven't been taught some of this stuff. So it's a work in progress, and they don't always get it right away. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes a couple of years, but we just keep hammering it home. And eventually, if they want to get to the next level, then they'll start to absorb that information and translate it to their game.
And sometimes it takes a whole career greener and we still don't get it, right? I mean, exactly. Like you and I.
We become coaches.
First of all, congratulations on your 340. It's actually funny looking up. I was 31st overall. You were 30th.
Yeah.
You played 341. I played 41. So you got me by 300 there. But what, like I wanted to spend more time when we end up talking about what you're doing right now, which I hope you can forgive me for that, because I don't want to discount your own career. But in your travels, we were relatable in the fact that we were both, seems like, suitcases too, right? We were up and down quite a bit. We were trying to find our spot. where did you have the most success, and what was your fondest experience from your time up there in the NHL?
I probably had the most fun, the most success when I started here in Winnipeg with the Moose. I ended up getting after that lockout year that I spoke about earlier, I ended up getting a one-way deal with Vancouver the next year. Played the whole year in Vancouver. Up to that point, I had kind of been an up and down guy, always on a two-way contract, but that was kind of the first year where I felt like I solidified myself on the team, found a role. I loved Vancouver. I loved playing there. We had an amazing team, great bunch of guys. We had some success in the playoffs, won a couple rounds. So I would have to say, my fondest memories were probably in the Vancouver organization, split between Manitoba, the Moose, and the Canucks. I can't speak about, fondest memories in the NHL without talking about the Oilers, because I grew up in Camrose, about an hour outside of Edmonton. So for me to get traded to basically my hometown team that I watched growing up through the glory days in the 80s, win all those Stanley Cups, for me to actually join that team and be on that ice surface that all the greats, lifted that Stanley Cup on I can't even really put it into words, to be honest with you, how exhilarating that was to suit up for my first game with the Oilers and have a bunch of people watching. And it was a tad overwhelming, my time in Edmonton, but it was very cool to kind of live out my childhood dream in Edmonton.
That's awesome, man, because that was at the tail end of your career there too, right?
I had two different stints in Edmonton. I had one early. I was probably 22, 23. And then I went to Europe, bunch of different stops in the minors, and I ended up signing in Oklahoma City, which was Edmonton's farm team, and got called up for a few games again.
Right. Yeah, I see that down in your hockey DB there. You got 10 goals that one year. That was good.
Yeah. I went 5 years almost to the day between my second last NHL goal and my last NHL goal, which was crazy to think about.
That's cool. Yeah. We'll wrap with one that I always like to ask. Like, so in all your travels and all the teams you were on, who is the most consummate professional? The guy that you just, you can't say Jerome again now, though. You have to say somebody else that just sort of exemplified what it meant to be an NHLer, on the ice with skill, off the ice with how they went about their business, and just somebody you think would be a great role model for some of these younger guys now.
Oh boy, I played with. You mentioned all my different stops. I played with so many different players. To pick just one would be hard. I would like to pick a guy that I played with in the minors. His name was Brian Helmer, who was he was an incredible teammate. He won Calder Cups. We didn't win one together, but we were close. The 1 year in Oklahoma City, he was just the ultimate team guy. Would do anything. He wasn't a fighter, but he would do it if he had to. He was so. What was really important to him was that the team was a family, and he set that culture there in Oklahoma City. He was first at the rink in the morning, last to leave. Always working on stuff. Even when he was, I think at the time he was in his mid to late 30s, he was always working on stuff, taking care of himself, and just an incredible teammate. I wish I would have spent more time with him, on his team, but he certainly made a lasting impression on me in our time together. So, I played with a guy in Edmonton. His name was Mike Greer, who was much the same at the NHL level. Incredible teammate. Rem Murray was unbelievable, and these aren't they're not household names, but they're just guys that really made an impression on me just by the way they carried themselves and the way that they worked over the course of their career. So
I love that.
Pretty fortunate to play with some of the players I played with.
When you're talking about Helmer, I played against Helmer, and I also played against this guy that I'm going to talk about, Jared Smith, and I asked a similar question, right? So Jared Smith went on 700 NHL games, played with a lot of superstars, and not to discount the superstars that he played with, but he said the guy that made the biggest impact on him and on his career was Dane Jackson.
Yeah.
And him, and anyone who's ever been around him, captain for pretty much every team he played in, and just did everything right, and there's just so much power in that C word called character, right? And when you see it and you're around it, you feel it. and it's such a blessing to a team to have somebody like that, because everyone that's a part of that, like it impacted Jared Smith to the point that, it changed who he was.
Yeah.
Like, he now knew how he could be, right? Like, he now knew what the example was and how he could model that. And yeah, he just said, and I had the pleasure of playing that clip. I played the clip, Jared Smith and talking about Dane Jackson for Dane Jackson, because I interviewed him because he's at UND there, and it choked him up, and it's I just love hockey for that. I love the fact that it's a team. I love how the different ages can impact the younger ages, and you get that right mix in there, boy, you can make an impression, and an awesome job by Helms for making that impression on you, and I'm sure it made you a better veteran, a better leader for other players once you saw what that looked like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so, that's what's great about hockey and the game is that, I played with so many different players and I lost touch with so many of them, but when you do reconnect with whoever it might be, the old times just come racing back again. And that's what's great about, the people that are involved in hockey. And I know hockey has gotten a bad rap the last, few weeks or whatever it has, but 99.9% of the people in the hockey world are incredible people. And I just wanted to get that out there as well.
Oh yeah, I know for sure. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you and I, what we're doing right now is a perfect example. Like, really, I don't know last time we played against each other to talk, but it's, it's like we've been in the dressing room since yesterday. Like it's easy. The hockey people are usually easy. Usually we get along real well. Same intention, especially people who are still involved in the game. I mean, like you and I are, love the sport, want to be a part of it, and at the point now where we want to give back to it. And I know that today's conversation has definitely helped somebody out there. That's why I love doing these. Your insight and our discussion is making some family understand the game a little bit better right now, or some player just have a new perspective that might want to be able to apply to their game. And you and I both, right? I mean, we don't want to have anything left on the table. And
that's why I coach. I mean, I want to make I want to get players to the next level and develop them and all that stuff. But I also want to impact them, on a personal level in their life. And because not everybody's going to go play pro or make it to the NHL. I want to make sure that I leave a lasting impression on these kids. So if they don't go on in the hockey world, then, they're a good human being in whatever avenue they decide to go in life in general. So that's
good on you.
Important to me.
And the secret sauce, I think, what you just hit on there is like, that's like coaching 2.0 right now, is like you getting the person, understanding the person, developing the person makes better hockey players.
Yeah.
Right. So you develop connection, a human connection, which was very rare when we were playing, right? It was like, we were part of a system and it was a one down approach. But like, I know, talking to coaches now that are involved, like the better you are at that human connection, that human piece, you're going to get a better hockey player. And
you'll just get through to the player quicker if you know them on a personal level, if you actually invest some time with them and get to know them and, ask about their family or ask about, what are their interests outside of hockey. So you have that connection, away from the rink as well. So when you try and, teach them something, within the game of hockey, then you have their attention and they trust you, which is a big word. They have to be able to trust what you're saying. And, part of that is just making those personal connections with those players.
Exactly. Oh, I just had a great comment there from somebody saying, I love that there are people like you guys out there with a heart and a hockey stick. So thank you for that. I mean, I know Greener's just trying to do the right thing, and that's just what we're trying to do here is just help and do the right thing and be a part of this great game, which has given both of us so much. I know. And now our boys get to play it too. So it's fun to be a part of that. But Greener, thanks so much for your time. I had to run to my younger son's practice. We got to do this again. I got your number now, so you're not going to be able to get rid of me. Love having these chats, though. It's great. I love seeing the success you guys are having. Make sure you give Connor a big hello for me, and I want to keep watching you guys tally up the win column there.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Anytime you want to do it again, I'll be around. So
all right. Thanks, buddy. Cheers. All right, thanks for sticking with us here today. Greener, if you're listening, thank you so much. That was an awesome conversation. If you're listening here to the end, thank you, listeners, for staying till the end. I really wanted to get into Greener's career because his career is like a lot of careers out there,
won, well, not a lot, because not a lot of people play 341 games in the NHL, so that's impressive to say the least. But not everybody plays 341 games in one city, or has a career like Zdeno Chara, that everyone knows about. Greener was a journeyman. Greener was somebody who battled for every game that he got. He was somebody who kept finding ways to get opportunities with new teams, and pro hockey's a grind. So I really wanted to chat with him about his journey, about him signing in all these different places, playing in all these different places, probably not having houses in these places, but living out of hotels and being up and down to the minors, and what that experience was like for him, and what he wished he could have done differently. Some things that he could have, he could have shared with us about that experience, because I know there have been a ton of great stories there. So maybe we'll have him back on and spend more time talking about Greener and what he took away from all his time in pro hockey. But today we talked about the Winnipeg Ice. They deserve that recognition. Those players on that team deserve that recognition. They are the number one ranked team in the CHL. Greener works with them every day, trying to get those guys better. And it's a pretty cool feather in your cap to be a part of the best team in the Canadian Hockey League as we speak. So Greener, thanks so much for taking time today. Thanks so much for sharing your time with me, listeners. I'm going to try and be a little more frequent and a little more automatic here with the podcast, but I've been working with these other teams and getting so busy on the support aspect that it's hard to get these things lined up and arranged. As you can imagine, there's quite a bit of work involved in them, but definitely have a good potential lineup coming out here. So stay tuned to the podcast, and until next time, play hard and keep your head up.